This video is an introduction to the observation description unit and assignment. In class we discussed the readings related to this, gave you an assignment, and talked over what was required of you for your writing in this first assignment. I want to use this video to try and amplify and add to our knowledge of description, something that people take for granted, just like they take elements of writing for granted. Observation and description is something that people think they know everything about. But I'm asking you to reconsider that, especially as you think about not just this class, but your future professions. Don't many of them help train us to observe and describe what it is that we're seeing? Give us more things to think about for that profession, whether that be something physical, as if we're being trained for a technical job and you have to look for something, or whether that be in paralegal, where we're having to look for key concepts, ideas, precedents, whether that be for medicine, we're having to look for elements in patients or symptoms, really, that come up in our case studies that we take a look at. There are lots of examples of this, and we're oftentimes trained to observe and don't even notice it happening, but I'd like us to take it more seriously. We start with a quote from Sherlock Holmes, just to start us thinking about the difference between seeing and observing. You can have someone who's seeing something but not really observing or putting it together and making sense of it. And Sherlock Holmes says this to Watson to try and give him instruction. And Watson's no dummy, but the point is that Holmes is teaching him something about his world and what he notices. You see, but you do not observe. Very interesting sort of statement, because it's Holmes who's putting it together for Watson to understand, and he has that uncanny ability to do so. There are many readings that we take a look at that are like this, Samuel Scudder being among them. Samuel Scudder studying a fish, just to review, but it's not a fish that he's interested in. It's not even what he's going to end up studying. Remember, he's outside of his field when he's taking a look at that old fish and that Agassiz has him learning from. Agassiz teaches him about the fish and teaches him about himself, and that's the big lesson learned. It's not a cheesy lesson, it's an important one. He's studying something that he probably wouldn't like on purpose because he can notice things about it and that it grows on him, as we discussed in class. But also that what he'll notice is something that will be ingrained in him. He's noticing something about his own ability to notice things. You see the fish, you see yourself. And that's the key idea I hope people take away from some of the readings. It's not just about observing strange things in our environment. It's about understanding what it could all mean. Okay, let's continue on here. I have a few examples from students. I'll show positive and negative ones. We'll start with some negative ones to see what you think about these, and we'll talk about these more in class. When I have students do a description assignment, there's usually a mix of non-descriptive and descriptive elements. These first we will take together. The entryway of the building was a sentence that came up in a worksheet I handed out in class. We practiced with it a little bit. You might recall how students responded to it. Here are some samples taken from students. I want to see what you think about them and also talk about what I think about them so you can get a sense of me and gauge your response by understanding what I think about these things too. Here's one from a student. The entryway was dirty because it was grimy. Okay, we get a little bit of description there. It gives me a little something to go on. But don't we really have to know what that grimy means? Having cleaned a lot in my past, I know that grimy can look different, can even smell or appear different. Is it just dirt? We'll later on ask why that grime is important. But the point here first is to actually notice and be able to articulate what that's like. Not respond with, well, you know, it was grimy. I need a little bit more than just the griminess. So we want to push what we already have and not just exit out or delete it or erase it. We want to know what the grimy means. Here's another example sentence. Modeled on the ones that I used in class, the child played at the beach with not a care in the world. Can you tell what I thought about a sentence like this? This is a little practice sentence. The child played at the beach with not a care in the world. Well, of course, that second part of the sentence does describe the child, not a care in the world, but then again, let's think about that. How do we know she didn't have a care in the world? What does that look like? Don't take it as taken for granted. How do we know that the child's not anxious? How do we know that the child's not some other emotion? What is it, the emotion that we do see, and how do we know that we see it? It's not obvious, and it's not something we can take for granted anymore. We want to key off the clues in what we see and how we describe them to have the most apt, the most precise description of them. Because we're noticing the child, because we're also noticing ourselves. The entryway again. The entryway of the building was dirty. There were chips, food, and rodents. This is more descriptive. There's actually an inventory of things that are there. However, it's a list a description. I don't even know really what kind of chips there are and what kind of food. Are the rodents rats? I'm not sure yet. The students kind of gotten us into specifics, but I think they could do more. With each of these cases, we're on our way, but we need to do a little bit more with what's there. And of course, the natural question is one that you'll ask of yourselves, well, how do we know we have enough? Aha, a good question. Through practice. Through practice and models and samples. Let's see what you think about some other samples here. In any good description, there's a mix of non-descriptive and descriptive elements. What do you think about these? And we'll talk more in detail about them in class. I'll give them to you. Once you think about them, then we'll review them in class. It takes a little bit of review and thinking about them to make sure that we know what we think and kind of know what our instructor thinks, so we can kind of compare the two. The entryway was dirty because there were dust bunnies. What do you think about that? Is that descriptive? Is that as descriptive as it could be? What are the benefits of this description that came from a student? Or another one. The entryway was dirty. Somebody should clean it up. Is this descriptive? How would you characterize it? What could the student do in this case? Everything seems pretty cagey, sketchy. Is this descriptive? What do you think about this? Can we develop some rules from any of these that help us understand how we can create our own good descriptions too? How about this last one? We have more words to the sentence here, but tell me what it means. The child played on the beach alone when suddenly a young girl came up and smashed the sandcastle with the shovel. You could tell the boy was furious. Okay, there's more to the sentence here. There's more words to the sentence. But tell me what it is that makes this sentence descriptive or not, or where the student could focus the description, come up with more descriptiveness. All right, so what am I trying to say? With each of these, we'll take a look at them in the class, think about them. We'll review them in class and do more practice. Summary of my advice and some questions I'll ask you, and you'll help me answer. Watch for vagueness. There's the obvious one. Are you telling us about something, or are you showing us? Maybe this will help us derive some guides for ourselves as we go to describe what it is that we're describing. Are you telling us about the place, or are you showing us what it's like? Our list descriptions. Is description just telling stories? My advice, you need description, and lots of it. The more specific and detailed you are from the start, the better. Don't hesitate to put something down, even if you're not quite sure how it fits in. That's usually discovered on the way, as I'll say more about here in a minute. You really can and should practice description. It's what the core ability was, as Sherlock talks to Holmes, as Agassiz talks to Scudder, and in the other readings that we have as well. We should practice it. We can get better with it. Other common problems are potential issues. Descriptions have to use flowery language. I hope to address this in class. You might think about it. Are the best descriptions using flowery language? Probably not. You can guess where I'm going with this. Actually, flowery language can detract from a description depending on how it's presented. What purpose do descriptions fill? Well, let's think about that. The descriptions are there for a purpose, whether you do them for an assignment for class or you do them for your profession. There's a reason why you're asked to be descriptive, to fill out a description, to describe vividly. Think about what the purpose is for this assignment. Usually we will get the thesis, I'll hint here, during or after you begin the observations, and that can be unnerving for people. They may have chosen a place to observe, but they may not know how it fits into the bigger picture of their project. You may have some idea. I can help you with whatever case you seem to fit, but the point is, if you go into it and feel like you're not quite sure the main purpose or governing thesis that holds all these descriptions together, that's actually pretty natural, and actually it's a lot more like your assignments for college than people, I think, credit. Okay, they don't like it until they get used to it, and it does help. It's something I learned early on in my career, and I think that by conveying this to you, it can get you in the habit of having more success with your assignments. Descriptions really should include what you saw, heard, smelled, felt, really what you sensed, and we'll talk more in detail in our class discussions and our readings about what that means, because that includes all the senses that we can include, all of them that are relevant to our description. I waited to say it until now. A common problem to this is that students often hesitate to describe their observations with language. They hold back. They say, well, I don't know whether I should do this. One of the things we start off with in class is not hesitating or trying to get us over that hurdle, that plateau that stops us from actually noticing, describing things, the barrier that prevents us from seeing and noticing things, because our observation, our description, our thinking is worth it. As I say here, without close observation and description, what can people do? Really not much, if they don't have it. But with those skills, what can't they accomplish? It seems to me that people who are successful in any of their careers, professions, families, jobs, real life, have those good powers of observation. They may not be perfect, but the point is that they practiced and honed their ability so that they have certainly achieved a better potential. May not always notice it, or sometimes we'll take it for granted. But I think those ideas are ones I want to explain as key and need to communicate that are essential for this first step and really for the rest of the semester. Without close observation skills, for example, how can I get people to notice things about their reading or about what they write? In any subject, close observation, close description, or careful description are essential key activities that really help you learn.